We are getting some new details here about the abuse that Bowe Bergdahl suffered at the hands of the Taliban. Sergeant Bergdahl is recovering in that military hospital in Germany after 5 years of captivity. Meanwhile, in the U.S., his parents are getting death threats. Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr is here with the very latest. Barbara, good morning.
Good morning, Brooke. Well, the Taliban are now telling their side of the story. Relatively good treatment of Bowe Bergdahl, they say. But U.S. officials are saying Bergdahl is saying he was physically abused. At his hospital in Germany, Bowe Bergdahl, promoted automatically to sergeant while held prisoner, now says he wants to be called by his old rank, private first class. In his mind, he is a PFC, a senior U.S. official says, adding that Bergdahl wearing his uniform would be part of the regular reintegration process. A Taliban source tells CNN's Nick Robertson that not long after Bergdahl was taken prisoner, he escaped and was on the run for 3 days before being recaptured. The Taliban account, which cannot be independently confirmed, claims Bergdahl never converted to Islam and was allowed to celebrate Christmas and Easter. Secretary of State John Kerry defends sending Taliban detainees to Qatar in exchange for Bergdahl. On CNN's State of the Union, he suggested to Elise Labott that the U.S. would be keeping an eye on them if they return to the fight.
Elise, I'm not telling you that they don't have some ability at some point to go back and get involved, but they also have an ability to get killed doing that.
Senate Intelligence Chairman Dianne Feinstein on CBS said she isn't buying it.
I heard John Kerry this morning say, don't worry about them in Doha. You can't help but worry about them in Doha.
And what of that alleged Taliban threat to kill Bergdahl if word of the prisoner swap leaked? Feinstein said she doesn't believe there was a credible threat.
No, I do not. I've heard of none, let me put it that way.
But the senior U.S. official says that once a prisoner exchange deal was reached with Bergdahl's captors, the U.S. had to move quickly. Because of intelligence, other Taliban elements might kill him to keep him out of U.S. hands. And so far, Bowe Bergdahl has not phoned his parents, we are told. U.S. officials are also saying that the FBI indeed is continuing to investigate threats against his parents. Chris?
Barbara, thank you again for pushing the reporting on this. People have a lot of preconceived notions about the family, about how Bergdahl came to be captured, about what captivity meant and didn't mean. And the truth is, for many of us, we have no idea what we're talking about. So let's bring in somebody who does. Keith Stansel. He was held hostage for 5.5 years by a Colombian militant group. Keith, thank you for helping us with this. I remember in covering your story and sitting with you how painfully revealing it is to explain just how difficult it is to live in captivity, let alone for this period, let alone with people who may well kill you at any given moment. Please let us understand, when you hear the details of Bergdahl's captivity, what does that do to somebody over that period of time?
Well, the first thing that strikes me, Chris, good morning, for Bergdahl, it's 2014 for us. Well, it's not 2014 for him. He's been in a box, for lack of a better term, for 5 years. So it doesn't seem all that unreasonable for me to hear that he's more comfortable being called PFC. So, we had certain things in captivity that we held on to, and for us, and our families also, we had this preconceived vision of what our family was going to be like and what life was going to be like. As we got captured in 2003, rescued in 2008, but my vision of my family, my home, all of the conditions in which I lived were from 5.5 years previous. So he's been held in kind of just a time warp, and it's very difficult. It's a difficult adjustment. That part doesn't surprise me. It's just, that for me may just be a comfort zone for him.
What does it mean that he's not ready to speak to family? Because for us, the uninitiated, you'd think that's the first thing you want to do. What do we miss?
I think what some people might be missing here is just the emotional shock that one's in, the overload. As I related to you earlier, the first time I got to see my family, The doc that was assigned to me said, hey, Keith, about 30 minutes is all you're going to get, and probably 10 to 15 into it, it's going to be a lot for you. It was overwhelming for me. It was overwhelming. And a big difference between the three of us and Bergdahl was that Mark and Tom and I at least had each other's support in captivity. So it was a little bit easier to relate to somebody. We came back, we still could speak English. All of those things were a little more normalized from us. I thought about it last night, how much, how difficult it was for him. No English, 5 years of foreign land. He didn't have the, for lack, an internal support network like we did, so to speak, having the three of us together. So it's got to be tough. But I'm sure that they're prepping him as best they can, and he's into decompression now, so we'll see. But that, I think, in time will come. Hopefully for the family it will, because these reports we're hearing of threats and all, it's just, it's mind-boggling to me that somebody would threaten his family.
Well, let's talk about that. People are throwing the family into the political fray, essentially, right? And they're looking at the father and the beard that he grew, and what he says were gestures of understanding to figure out what was going on with his son, and they're now basically blaming him as a Muslim extremist and a sympathizer, and that he pushed his son in that direction as well. You find it shameful. Why?
Well, we've always got a fringe element, don't we? I mean, people that have a point to make, or they're a little overstated and not so measured in what they say. I look at Bergdahl's father as like any other father, or his mother. What do you do when total control has been taken out of your hands, and all you want is to get your child home? What do? I don't blame him whatsoever. We all may take different paths, but at the end, any of us, we love our children. I mean, I have 3 boys and a daughter. Let's say my son were to rob a bank tomorrow, hopefully never. I understand he's got to pay for his crime, but at the end of the day, because he was a bank robber, does that mean I don't love him anymore as a father? I mean, that's the point that I don't get. I respect Bergdahl's family's efforts to do whatever they can to get him back. Whether I agree with them or not is irrelevant. It's irrelevant. You have a father obviously dedicated to his son. I don't get where the animosity for that's coming from. To me, it's terrible. It's a horrible thing.
Well, often the source of anger is somewhat confusing. All we get to see is its manifestation. And, while I wish I didn't have to do this, just to correct the record, Bowe Bergdahl is a practicing Presbyterian. He's not a Muslim. So those of you who keep shouting that like it was even relevant, like being a Muslim is bad, are just wrong. Let me ask you one other thing, Keith. When we hear reports that he tried to escape, and that he may well have been held in very severe confinement after that during the proof of life offerings, he never said anything that was a statement against interest with the United States. He never criticized the United States. Many are dismissing that as so what. How difficult is it to maintain in confinement? How difficult is it to resist turning or saying whatever you're told to say when in captivity?
I don't think that for Americans it's that difficult. We have a patriotism here. It's kind of homegrown, and I think where he's from in Idaho, I'd imagine that's pretty deep in everybody's blood there. But, hey, I remember at one point in captivity, I'm chained to a tree, and I'm listening to a BBC press conference live covering the Secretary of Defense, and an AP reporter said, hey, Mr. Secretary, what about the 3 American hostages? And he just looked, he said, we don't discuss them. We don't negotiate next. One side, Chris, that killed the 3 of us. It was very, very tough for us to hear that. But on the other side, as Americans, we were proud of the stance that was taken, a very tough stance. It had to be very tough for Bergdahl. Whether you agree with what he's done or not, and we still don't know, and like we said, a lot is conjecture, he was solo on his own. Got to be tough with those guys. For 5 years, I mean, it's just unbelievably tough.
And you've been very clear in your work with people who've been taken into captivity, your experience yourself, it's going to take time. God willing, he winds up making a recovery like you have. It's a great joy to see the pleasure that you take in living your life and the pictures and the work that you're doing now and the love that you're having with your family. So, Keith, let's hope the best for him and see if he can come out close to where you are. Thank you for the perspective, my friend.
As always, Chris, have a great day, and I just hope that people out there will show a little prudence when it comes to his mother and father. They've done nothing wrong. Have a great day, Chris.
We're not seeing enough of it, but that is the right wish for sure. Keith, take care. Mick, a lot of news this morning. Let us know what's going on.
All right.